I had always believed that Christmas held a certain magic, the kind that softened even the hardest of hearts. Yet that December morning in Bath felt strangely heavy, as though the winter clouds themselves were pressing against my windows. I was preparing the roast when the doorbell rang, sharp and hurried, almost impatient. Edward stood there with a polished smile, Charlotte by his side, both wrapped in pristine coats and carrying matching gift bags. They looked like an advertisement for a perfect family, one I had never truly been part of, no matter how hard I had tried. "Mum," Edward said with a cheer that felt forced, "Merry Christmas. We brought you something special." Something special. The phrase clung to me with a warmth I did not trust. Inside the glossy bag lay a silk gown in deep emerald green, the kind worn by women who attend grand winter balls. It shimmered like starlight caught on water. Too grand for someone like me, I thought. Too deliberate. Too unexpected. "Try it on later, Mum," Charlotte said sweetly, though her eyes held a flicker of something colder. "It will look lovely on you." Lovely. Another word I no longer trusted. By the afternoon, we had set off for the larger family gathering in Bristol. I wore the gown because refusing it felt ungrateful. And perhaps a part of me wanted to believe that they genuinely thought of me, that this was a kindness rather than a performance. But the moment I entered the hall, I saw the looks. Smirks, whispers, raised eyebrows. My cheeks heated beneath the chandeliers. The room felt suddenly too bright, too sharp. "Mum," Edward muttered under his breath, leaning close enough that only I could hear him. "You did not have to take it so seriously. It is just a family dinner. You look a bit overdressed, do you not think?" Charlotte added, her voice soft yet cutting, "We thought you would know it was just a fun gesture. Still, it is good you tried." Tried. The word sliced through me. Around us murmurs stirred, gentle sniggers disguised as polite coughs. My hands trembled as I held my handbag a little tighter. I felt myself shrinking, folding inward like an old letter forgotten in a drawer. But beneath the humiliation, something inside me shifted. A small spark, faint yet firm, began to glow in the hollow they had carved in me for years. I did not speak, not yet. I simply watched them, the pair of them, as they basked in their own cleverness. They thought they had made me the joke of Christmas. They had no idea they had just handed me the key to my freedom. And as the clock chimed 6, and laughter echoed in corners where I no longer belonged, I quietly realized something. This Christmas would be the last time they ever made a fool of me. I had never asked for much in life. Even after my husband passed away 12 years ago, leaving me alone in our small stone cottage on the outskirts of Bath, I kept my world simple. A morning cup of tea. A walk through the quiet lanes. And the occasional visit from my son, Edward, who had grown distant ever since he married Charlotte. They lived only an hour away in Bristol, yet months could pass without a word. So when an unexpected parcel arrived at my door a week before Christmas, wrapped in deep red paper and sealed with a gold ribbon, I felt a warmth I had not felt in years. Inside lay the most beautiful dress I had ever seen. Midnight blue, soft as a whisper, with delicate beadwork that shimmered like frost under winter sun. A card accompanied it, written in Edward's familiar penmanship. To Mum. Wear this on Christmas Day. You deserve something lovely. My throat tightened. Perhaps, I thought, this year would be different. Perhaps they finally wished to celebrate with me sincerely, not simply out of obligation. On Christmas morning, I made the journey to their large townhouse in Clifton. Snow had begun to fall, settling lightly on the Georgian rooftops. I clutched the dress close, terrified of creasing it, hopeful that this day might be the beginning of mending what had long been broken. The house was already filled with laughter when I stepped through the door. Charlotte, immaculate as always, greeted me with a kiss on the cheek that felt more like a measurement than affection. Edward gave me a quick pat on the shoulder before turning back to his guests. They had invited more people than I expected. Colleagues, neighbors, even an author Charlotte hoped to impress. I stood by the doorway, unsure where to exist in all their busyness. Charlotte glanced at the plain clothes I wore and raised a brow. "You did bring the dress, did you not?" I nodded. She ushered me upstairs to change, her heels clicking sharply on each step. As I slipped into the dress, its beauty wrapped around me like a soft memory of who I once was. I looked at my reflection and for the first time in years, I saw a woman instead of a shadow. But the moment I descended the staircase, the room fell silent. Someone laughed quietly. Then louder. Edward's voice drifted across the room. "Goodness, Mum looks like she raided a theatre costume trunk." Heat surged through my face. Charlotte added, in a voice meant to sound playful. "It is rather much, dear. You look almost desperate for attention." Their guests chuckled. The midnight blue that had moments ago felt magical now felt ridiculous. I wrapped my arms around myself as if I could disappear inside the fabric. Edward cleared his throat, raising his glass. "Let us toast to Mum, who never fails to bring a little spectacle to the room." Laughter burst loudly this time. My heart cracked open. Every year, every sacrifice, every moment I had given them with quiet loyalty suddenly turned sharp inside me. I realized then that the dress had not been a gift. It had been a trap. And just as I stood frozen in the middle of their elegant sitting room, struggling not to collapse beneath the weight of humiliation, someone behind me whispered something that made me snap my head around. The whisper carried a truth I was never meant to hear. A truth that would change everything. I did not move at first. The laughter around me blurred into a distant, echoing clatter, as though I was submerged beneath cold water. Only the whisper stayed sharp in my mind, slicing through the humiliation like a blade. She actually believed it was a real gift. The words were soft, but unmistakably Charlotte's. She stood only a few steps behind me, speaking to one of her friends in a tone soaked with amusement. Of course she believed it. Poor thing always does. Edward said it would be hilarious. My breath caught. The room tilted. My own son. The dress had been a joke. A performance piece. A way to entertain their guests at my expense. I steadied myself on the banister, but the beadwork on the sleeve glimmered mockingly in the warm light. The very thing that had made me feel beautiful now made me feel foolish. Someone tapped a spoon against a glass. "Attention, everyone." Edward again. He stood in the center of the room, smiling with the self-satisfaction of a man who thought himself charming. "Before we start dinner, we have a little something to share. It is about this lovely dress." A ripple of excitement ran through the guests. Charlotte clasped her hands dramatically, hiding her smirk behind her fingers. I froze in place. Whatever they had planned, I knew it would only cut deeper. Edward gestured towards me. "Mum has always had unique taste. So Charlotte and I thought it would be fun to surprise her with something bold this year. And she wore it. Bless her heart." The crowd tittered. Someone murmured, "It is almost cruel." Almost. My throat tightened painfully. I felt like a specimen being displayed. A curious creature in the wrong skin. Then Charlotte added, "You should have seen Edward when he found it in that bargain box. He said, 'This is perfect for Mum. She will never know.'" A hush fell. Not a sympathetic hush but the quiet anticipation of more ridicule. I felt their gazes crawling across my skin, dissecting me, reshaping the dress into a costume of foolishness. But before the next wave of humiliation could break over me, the dining room door opened and a late guest entered, shaking snow from his coat. It was Mr. Harrow, Edward's supervisor. A stern man known for his intolerance of cruelty. He looked at me. Then at Edward. Then at the laughing guests. His brows drew together. "What exactly is going on here?" Edward stiffened. Charlotte's smile faltered. The room shifted. A sudden, uneasy silence spread like frost across a windowpane. And I realized, in that moment, that the truth was not just about the dress. Something else lay beneath their mockery. Something deeper. Something they were desperately trying to hide. A secret that would soon surface. Mr. Harrow's presence changed the air in the room. The playful cruelty that had been buzzing moments before now hung awkwardly, like decorations left up long after a party had ended. He removed his gloves slowly, his gaze locked on Edward with the sharpness of a magistrate evaluating a guilty man. Edward attempted a smile. Just a bit of festive fun, sir. Nothing serious. But Mr. Harrow did not return the smile. Fun, you say? Funny is not a word I would choose for what I just witnessed. Charlotte stepped forward, smoothing her dress as though poise could erase what had been said. Oh, it was only a harmless joke. Margaret enjoys surprises. My name on her tongue sounded like something she wished to wipe away. Mr. Harrow turned to me instead. Are you all right, Mrs. Ellington? The simple question nearly broke me. No one had asked me that all evening. Not my son. Not my daughter-in-law. Not anyone in this room filled with warm food, warm lights, and cold hearts. I tried to shape an answer, but before words could form, Charlotte cut in swiftly. She is absolutely fine. She is just a little overwhelmed. You know how older people can be. Older people. As if I was some fragile antique placed in the wrong part of the museum. A murmur swept the room. Discomfort. Disapproval. Shame. They were beginning to realize that the joke they had enjoyed so freely was not harmless at all. Mr. Harrow stepped closer to Edward. I hope, for your sake, this is not a reflection of how you treat your staff. Or your family. Edward paled. Of course not. This is different. This is private. Private. The word stung. So my humiliation was a family tradition, kept behind closed doors. Then Mr. Harrow's eyes drifted to the dress. Where did you even find such a thing? Before Edward could answer, Charlotte let out a nervous laugh. It was from that charity shop on Park Street. The clearance box near the back. Edward picked it because he thought the beads would sparkle under the lights. He said it would make her stand out. A beat. Mr. Harrow frowned. Park Street. The clearance box. He looked genuinely confused now. Did you even bother to check the label inside? The room went still. Edward blinked. Label. What does that matter? Mr. Harrow stepped forward and, with my permission, gently lifted the edge of the sleeve to peer inside. A moment later, he inhaled sharply. Good Lord. Charlotte rushed closer. What? What is it? Mr. Harrow straightened slowly, his expression tightening into something between disbelief and horror. This is not a bargain dress. It is an original piece from Serena Armitage's early couture line. Very rare. Very valuable. It must have been donated by mistake. This is worth thousands. A ripple of gasps spread through the guests. Charlotte's hand flew to her mouth. You are joking. I felt the fabric around me anew. Not foolish. Not gaudy. But precious. Mr. Harrow continued, his tone colder now. To mock someone you claim to care about is shameful. To mock them while they unknowingly wear something of this worth, is unspeakably cruel. Edward swallowed hard, color draining from his face. But before he could form a reply, Mr. Harrow added one final blow. And if this is how you treat your own mother, I dread to imagine how you treat those who cannot walk away. A tremor rippled through the room. Walk away. Two simple words. A choice I had never truly believed I possessed. But now, as the guests stared at me with something like regret, as my son crumbled beneath the weight of his own actions, I felt something stir inside me. A small, fragile ember of strength. One I had not felt in years. Then came the moment that changed everything. From the back of the room, someone spoke. Someone who had been silent until now. Someone who knew the truth behind all of this far better than anyone else. And when their words reached my ears, the final piece of the puzzle snapped into place. The voice came from near the fireplace, quiet yet clear enough to slice through the thick silence that had settled over the room. I think she should know the rest. It was Clara, the young woman who lived 2 doors down from Edward and often visited to help Charlotte with event planning. She was normally timid, a shadow hovering politely at the edge of gatherings. But tonight, her face was pale, her hands trembling as she clutched a folded napkin. Edward stiffened. "Clara, do not." Charlotte's head snapped towards her. "Yes, Clara. Do not." Their panic was instantaneous, instinctive, and far too revealing. Clara swallowed hard, her eyes darting to me before dropping to the floor. "I am sorry, Mrs. Ellington. I really am. I did not want to be part of this." A murmur drifted through the guests. "Part of what?" The question echoed in my mind, cold and heavy. Clara wrung the napkin between her fingers. "I was there, when they bought the dress." She hesitated, glancing again at Edward. He had gone completely still, as if freezing could undo what was already unraveling. Clara continued, her voice cracking. "Edward did not pick it as a joke at first. He chose it because he liked it. He said it reminded him of the clothes you used to sew when he was little. He said you would look beautiful in it." My breath caught. Edward had said that. But Clara was not finished. Then Charlotte laughed at him. "She said giving you something nice was pointless. That you would ruin it with your old-fashioned ways. She said it would be funny to make you think it was a grand gift when it actually came from a bargain box." Charlotte's eyes widened with fury. "Clara, that is not what I..." But Clara stepped back, shaking her head. "It is exactly what you said. You told Edward that the real gift was the lesson. To remind his mother who she really is." A harsh gasp rippled through the room. Even Mr. Harrow's jaw tightened. I felt the floor shift beneath me. That was the lesson. To remind me who I really was. A servant in all but name. A woman whose worth fit neatly inside a clearance bin. Clara whispered. "I told them it was cruel. But they laughed." And then Charlotte said something else. The room leaned forward collectively. Clara's voice broke into a whisper. She said mocking you would make them feel powerful. That you were easy to control because you would never fight back. Charlotte surged forward, her facade cracking. "Clara, enough." But it was too late. The truth was out. A truth sharper than any insult thrown earlier. A truth that stripped away every lie I had tried to believe about my son and his marriage. The room was dead silent. Even the crackling fire seemed to pause. Edward finally spoke, his voice low, strangled. "Mum, it was not supposed to be like this." My hands trembled against the soft fabric of the dress. Thousands of pounds, Mr. Harrow had said. But the value meant nothing now. What mattered was the weight of every moment I had been dismissed, belittled, used. Every dinner cooked. Every room cleaned. Every hour spent waiting for a call that never came. I met Edward's eyes. For the first time, he looked afraid of what I might say. But before any words could form, another voice rang out from the doorway. Firm. Unhesitant. Perhaps she should hear the rest from me. All heads swiveled. And in that instant, I knew. The night was not done revealing its secrets. A tall figure stepped into the room, brushing cold air in with him as the door swung shut behind his coat. Snowflakes clung to the shoulders of his jacket, melting slowly under the golden light of the chandelier. It was Mr. Dalton, Charlotte's father. The room reacted instantly. Some straightened, some shrank back, and Edward seemed to forget how to breathe. Even Charlotte, usually poised and polished, went rigid as stone. Mr. Dalton was not a man who attended gatherings lightly. He was stern, measured, and famously unimpressed by theatrics. His sudden appearance felt deliberate, purposeful. He removed his scarf with unhurried precision. Then his eyes met mine. "Mrs. Ellington, I owe you an apology." A ripple of shock moved through the guests. Charlotte paled. "Father, you do not need to." But he silenced her with a raised hand. "I think I do." He turned to the room at large, his voice steady, every word weighted like a polished stone. "I was told this evening would be a simple family dinner. Instead, I walked into cruelty masked as celebration. And I believe it is time the truth was laid bare." Charlotte took a step back. Edward tried to intervene. "Sir, please, this is not." Mr. Dalton ignored him. "Margaret," he said, returning his gaze to me. "What you endured tonight did not begin with this dress. Nor with this gathering. The rot started long before." The breath around the room tightened. Mr. Dalton continued. 3 months ago, Charlotte came to stay with me for a week. She claimed she needed rest from the pressures of hosting and helping Edward. But one night, after far too much wine, she revealed something that troubled me deeply. Charlotte's voice rose, panicked. "Father, stop." But he did not. "She told me she resented relying on you. That the meals you cooked and the cleaning you did made her feel beholden. And rather than show gratitude, she chose to belittle you. To reclaim her authority, as she put it." My heart clenched. I had suspected resentment, but not cruelty. Edward's face drained of color. "Charlotte, you said nothing like that." But Charlotte looked at him with wild, cornered eyes. "I was stressed. I did not mean." Mr. Dalton cut in sharply. "She meant every word. And that is not the worst of it." The room stiffened. Even the fire seemed to quieten. Mr. Dalton reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. "Charlotte sent this to me last month. A proposed agreement, outlining how she planned to charge you rent for staying in their home. And how she intended to limit your visits to once per month unless you provided practical services, as she phrased it." My breath left me like someone had struck my chest. Charlotte whispered. I did it for us, Edward. You said we needed boundaries." But Edward stared at her as though seeing her for the first time in his life. "I said we needed structure, not exploitation. Not this." A pulse of heat rose beneath my skin. This was not a small betrayal. It was deliberate. Calculated. A rewriting of my place in their lives. Mr. Dalton's voice softened as he turned to me. "I warned her. I told her that building a home on pride would only lead to ruin. But she refused to listen. And you are the one who has suffered for it." The guests shifted, discomfort washing through them as the truth took shape, stark and undeniable. Then Mr. Dalton delivered the final blow. "And when Charlotte told me about the dress, she said the humiliation would teach you not to overstep again. That you needed to be reminded of your place." A cold silence fell, absolute and crushing. Charlotte's hands trembled. Edward looked sick. And I felt something inside me crack. Not a break. A release. Years of exhaustion. Years of shrinking myself. Years of waiting for gratitude that never came. Mr. Dalton bowed his head slightly to me. "You deserve better than this, Mrs. Ellington. Much better." And for the first time that night, I felt seen. Truly seen. But the night was not over. Because just as I began to gather my strength, a new voice, small, hesitant, fragile, rose from the back of the room. A voice that did not belong to an adult at all. "Grandma, did Mummy really do all that?" The room spun as every head turned. And there, half hidden behind the Christmas tree, stood Oliver. My grandson. His eyes wide. His lip trembling. His small hands clinging to the hem of his jumper. And I realized the truth. This moment would change far more than just the adults in the room. Eleanor froze at the top of the stairs, the candle in her hand trembling, casting flickering shadows on the damp stone walls. The figure of the man below paused for a moment, as if he had sensed her presence, then took a single step towards the light. The movement made Eleanor stumble back slightly. "Who's there?" she called, her voice wavering, trying to sound firm though her own fingers felt numb with cold. No answer came. Only the next step. Slow. Heavy. Echoing. As the figure climbed another stair, the candlelight finally revealed his form, or at least it should have. His face remained hidden in shadow, as though it refused the light entirely. Eleanor could see his jacket soaked through, water dripping from his sleeves, and the air carried the smell of wet earth. "This is a private house," Eleanor said louder, her voice breaking slightly. "Please explain what you are doing here." The man stopped. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then his head turned, slowly, directly towards her. A hoarse voice, barely above a whisper from the depths of darkness, spoke. "Eleanor." Her heart seemed to stop. She stumbled back, pressing against the wall. How did this stranger know her name? Before she could ask another question, the candle in her hand went out, extinguished by a sudden chill from nowhere. Darkness swallowed the entire corridor instantly. His steps now came faster. Quicker. Closing in. Eleanor groped along the wall, searching for anything, a light switch, a doorknob, something. Her hand found the handle of one of the guest room doors, and she yanked it open, locking herself inside. She held her breath. Outside, the corridor was silent. Completely silent. But moments later, a sound froze her blood. A soft knock at the door. 1. Then 2. And then the same voice whispered through the crack beneath the door. "Eleanor, we are not finished." And beneath the door, his shadow was clear, as if he were standing right there, waiting for her to unlock it. Eleanor did not sleep that night. She stayed huddled in the guest room, listening to the groan of the old house, every creak and sigh sounding like footsteps closing in on her. Her mind kept replaying the voice, the way it had whispered her name. She could not shake the feeling that he was not just in the house, but inside her very thoughts. By dawn, a thin mist had settled over the estate. Eleanor crept from the room, every movement measured and silent. She made her way to the attic door, drawn by a strange pull she could not explain. Perhaps it was instinct, or curiosity. Perhaps it was fear that demanded she uncover the truth. The attic stairs were steep and narrow, their wooden boards groaning under her weight. Dust motes danced in the weak morning light filtering through the small window. At the top, she found the door slightly ajar, as though inviting her in. Inside, the room was filled with forgotten relics, old trunks, cracked mirrors, and stacks of letters yellowed with age. But something else caught her eye. A figure. Huddled in the corner, barely moving. Eleanor froze. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with unspoken warnings. She could see the outline of a man, soaked and shivering, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of a soaked hat. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he lifted his head. "Eleanor." The voice was the same. Familiar. Terrifying. Her hands shook as she took a step forward, and in that instant, the floorboard beneath her cracked sharply. The figure sprang up, disappearing into the shadows of the rafters. Eleanor spun around, heart hammering. The attic seemed endless now, filled with shadows that twisted and writhed, as though alive. And then she noticed it, a single envelope on the floor, addressed to her, in handwriting she did not recognize. Her name was written in a jagged scrawl. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside, a photograph fell to the floor. Eleanor gasped. It showed her as a child, standing in the very same estate, yet beside her was the man from the stairs, smiling. Smiling. But she had never seen him before. The room felt colder now. The shadows seemed to stretch toward her, patient, waiting. A whisper drifted from the rafters. You cannot run from what you were meant to find. Eleanor knew, in that moment, that the house held more than secrets. It held the answers to questions she had never dared to ask. And somewhere in the shadows, he was waiting. Eleanor could feel her pulse in her throat as she clutched the photograph. The attic was silent, save for the soft patter of rain against the window. She forced herself to breathe, forcing her mind to focus. Whoever had left this here wanted her to know something. But what? A sudden movement drew her gaze to the far corner. The man from before stepped forward, no longer hidden in shadow. His face was partially obscured by darkness, yet his eyes glimmered with a strange familiarity. You've been searching for answers, he said, voice low, almost a whisper. But some truths are harder to face than you imagine. Eleanor's knees shook. Who are you? How do you know me? He stepped closer, and she could now see the lines of age on his face, the faint scars that told of old battles. I am part of your past, Eleanor. Part of what was taken from you before you even knew it existed. Her head spun. Memories she had long buried flickered through her mind, shadowed corners of the estate she could not recall visiting, a lullaby she had never heard her parents sing, yet somehow knew. The man held out his hand. Come with me. There is no more hiding. You need to understand why you are here, why the house called you back. Eleanor hesitated, fear and curiosity warring inside her. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped forward, letting him guide her toward the far wall. Behind a heavy tapestry, he revealed a hidden door. Beyond it, a spiral staircase descended into darkness. Eleanor felt the chill hit her bones as the scent of damp earth and old stone filled the air. Everything begins here, he whispered. And everything ends once you know the truth. As they stepped into the shadows, the house seemed to hold its breath. Every door, every window, every echo in Windermere House waited for the moment she would uncover what had been hidden for decades. And Eleanor realized that whatever lay ahead, there was no turning back. The spiral staircase wound downward, each step creaking under Eleanor's careful weight. Darkness enveloped them, but a faint light flickered ahead, drawing her forward like a moth to a flame. Her guide's presence was steady, but the tension in the air was almost unbearable. At last, they reached a chamber carved into the stone beneath Windermere House. Candles flickered along the walls, illuminating shelves filled with dusty journals, yellowed letters, and portraits that seemed impossibly familiar. Eleanor's eyes widened. This was the heart of the house's secrets. The man gestured to a large wooden desk. Everything you need to know is here. Your family's past, the choices made in shadows, and the legacy that was hidden from you. Eleanor picked up a journal. The handwriting was delicate, looping, unmistakably her mother's. She began to read, piecing together the story, a hidden child, a betrayal that spanned decades, and a secret kept to protect her from danger she could never have imagined. Her heart pounded. Every revelation cut deeper than the last. Names, dates, and confessions revealed the truth. She had been watched, guided, and protected all along. The house had not called her back for nothing. It had waited for her to understand. The man finally spoke. You see, Eleanor, Windermere House is more than a home. It is a keeper of truths. And now, you are its rightful heir, not only to its walls, but to the knowledge it holds. The past cannot be changed, but you can decide what comes next. Eleanor closed the journal, tears glistening in her eyes. The weight of generations pressed on her, yet a strange clarity filled her. The mystery was no longer just shadows and whispers. She knew who she was, where she came from, and the choices that awaited her. As she ascended the spiral staircase back into the light, the storm outside had cleared. Windermere House seemed to breathe with her, alive with the secrets finally unearthed. Eleanor stepped into the grand hall, no longer just a visitor, but a guardian of the past, and the future that awaited her. The house had kept its secrets for decades, but at last, its story was hers to carry.